morning. I'm Joe Watson, production manager at Wolfe Construction Group, and we're here again this morning to talk about tuck pointing or pointing. Now, the brick in your home, it has a structural life that will last quite a long time, but the joints in between the brick tend to fail over time, the mortar. So we're going to discuss how to rejuvenate and renew your brick facades and add more structural soundness to them by removing the mortar this morning and adding more mortar to it, and what's involved in the process. This process, once again, is called tuck pointing or pointing. First things you're going to want is you're going to need safety equipment. I have my mask right here to prevent the dust. I have safety glasses, pretty purple, and some hearing protection for when I'm using my angle grinder this morning for removing the mortar joints. Now, we're not actually tuck pointing this morning, I should say. We are just going to kind of show you the process. I don't know whose residence this is, but maybe we'll have a conversation with them about this joint at some point in time. Now, when you're looking at your facade, the brick in your home may be telling you a story. So this stair-step crack right here may be indicative of potential structural issues with the foundation, which is always a concern, and you can reach out to a structural repair company like ourselves to have them come look at that. It could also just be the mortar failing. So what I would do when I come to a home like this, now this brick is painted. Let me back up for a minute. This brick is painted, so this process would be slightly different and slightly less involved than unpainted brick, but we'll cover them both as we go along. So what I would do first thing, if this were unpainted brick, I would wet the brick surface and get an idea of the color of the mortar when it's wet for when I am mixing my mortar and trying to color match. Now, when you remove the mortar, you can go to a local brickyard or mason yard and have the mortar tested to have the content of the lime and the sand and the concrete mix determined, and the color of the sand that was used, to try to get a really close mixture, and you can mix that on site to put in between the brick joints. However, if you are a little bit more skilled mason, you can take basic concrete and mortar mix and add your own sand and use concrete dyes to get a similar result, usually in a quicker process. So what we would do if this were unpainted brick, once again we'd wet it, and then we would remove the mortar joints. Now you can remove the mortar joints using a angle grinder like this with a mason blade. This one is a two-bladed tuck pointing blade, and what I would do is I would, with my safety equipment on, I would run this along the joints and remove the mortar. Now, what I'm looking for is I'm looking to get the full depth that this tool will allow me of the blade into that joint, at least 2 to 2.5 inches. That's going to provide us a great structural repair joint. If you're not keen, or you don't necessarily, there's a lot of masons out there who don't use this tool for removing the mortar. They would use something like this. These are just brick and mason chisels with a tuck pointing hammer or a mason's hammer. Now, I do use these in certain situations, and that's, it's hit or miss. But for the most part, I will use this, and I will tell you, this causes a heck of a mess. So be prepared. There will be dust flying. There will be a lot of cleanup. But for the speed and the versatility and utility of this tool, I definitely use this first. Once I have that mortar removed, and I've determined how I'm going to mix the mortar to color match it, I'm then going to take a brush, a wire brush. This is not a wire brush, but this is what I have this morning. This is usually for cleaning the brick after the fact. I'll take a wire brush and I'll work around the joints, make sure I get the joints nice and clean. And then I will wet the surface again prior to applying my own mortar. Now, they make mason bags, mortar bags, that you would stick your mortar in and then fill it into the joints, which gives you a nice clean joint and keeps the mortar away from the brick facade, which will definitely speed up process and clean up later and make your joints look beautiful versus messy. Once again, very messy job. However, I don't use the typical mason bags. I did not have one morning when I was going out for a tuck pointing job, so I got into my wife's baking kit and stole some of her piping bags. She wasn't very happy when she went to go make a cake for me later on, which I found quite humorous and ironic. But I used one of these and I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the versatility of being able to change the sizes of my tips on the fly. And I fell in love with the disposability. I can recycle these. These are recyclable bags. I can toss them. I can use multiple different colors in different bags. And for me, the expense is a lot less, and I just love the versatility of these. So once I get the mortar in my bag, and I'm ready to go, I will pipe that in just like baking a cake. Now, I am terrible at baking cakes, but this I can do. And I'll get this into these joints, and then I will let that cure for a little bit before tooling it. Now, tooling, there are a couple of different tools that are very, very, very helpful. If you go to your local hardware store or your mason yards, they're going to definitely have tools similar to this. These are the tools that are going to provide us with the different joints that you'll find in the different brick. Like this will create that groove that you find in some brick. This will create the different the coved brick joints. And when you go to tool the mortar, the key is to allow it to cure the right amount prior to tooling it, or you can cause the mortar to fail. Now that's like I said, a more involved process. We're not going to get deep into that. And then once that's done and you've tooled it and you've cleaned it up, I will say that this tool sitting out here this morning, I love a 5-in-1. This is more like a 52-in-1, but in the industry you typically heard them called as a 5-in-1. I love this tool. I use it for cleaning little mortar chunks off of the brick. I use it for helping me clean out the joints, and so on and so forth. And then once you've got that mortar out, you can take your brush, and what I like to use to clean brick is not the muriatic acid, which a lot of people use, because it has a tendency, and if you don't use it correctly, it's very hazardous, and if you don't use it correctly, it can definitely damage the brick facades and the acid wash that are on the brick currently. I like to use 30% vinegar. You can find it at your hardware stores. You can mix a little bit of water in it, and you can clean the brick facades for the little bit of mortar that you get on there. I will say that once the brick is clean and the mortar's in, it definitely takes a little bit of time. If you've had mason work done at your home or pointing done at your home, you're going to see that the colors aren't going to match, because that mortar needs to cure for quite a bit prior to it actually matching the mortar in your home. And then sometimes, if you see up here on this wall, the sun is hitting this. I don't know how long this would hit if this were not painted. But of course, mortar that sits in the sunshine over time will get bleached out a little bit more than fresh mortar. So these are considerations. You have to let your mortar age with your home that already has aged mortar. I will say, more adventurous homeowners, they want to get out there and they want to try definitely DIY projects. We're all cooped up inside. This one, I don't recommend if you're not a skilled mason. Contact a skilled mason, because this job can be very tricky. There's a lot involved, a lot more that I didn't mention necessarily that just happens in the process, and it's definitely messy. If you can see just my bucket alone here, which arguably I could probably do just a little bit better at cleaning my tools, but you know, we all have to improve somewhere, right? If you're noticing cracks in your mortar and your facades and in your home, give us a call at Wolfe. Online, you can find us at Wolfe.construction. We will come out, we'll take a look at this, we'll have a conversation, and hopefully we can get you taken care of. I hope you have a great morning. This is Joe Watson, Production Manager at Wolfe Construction.